Hey y'all, Rick Fairless, Strokers Dallas. How you doing? We're in my office. This motorcycle is a 1961 TR6 Triumph Trophy 650. This is a pre-unit where the engine and the transmission are separate. They're not together. That's why they call it a pre-unit. The special thing about this motorcycle was the owner of this bike, James Blackstone, they called him Blackie. Blackie bought this bike new in '61, and in '64 he got killed on this motorcycle coming over to our house to have supper with us, my mom and dad. His parents, Blackie's parents, wanted nothing to do with this motorcycle, so they told my dad he could pick it up from the pound and keep it, and he did. And so in '64, my brother and I were 7 and 8 years old. So we used to play on this motorcycle, and it seemed so big, and we just loved it. We would sit on it, we would pretend like we're riding it, we would make the noises, and just, you know, we just loved this bike. And to my dad, this thing is worth more than a new Suburban. For years and years, it just sat in the garage. My dad never started it. He just wanted it in the garage. So years later, after I got grown, my dad had moved Blackie to his farm outside of Abilene, Texas, Cross Plains, Texas. And I used to tell him, why don't you bring that old Triumph up here and let me get it running? This was when I was still working for Glidden. And one Sunday he brought it back, said, let's get this old Triumph running. And he dropped it off to me, and I did as much as I could. And I talked to my buddy Jack Wilson, who owned Big D Cycle, and Jack and his team helped me get her going. Once I got it going, I started restoring it to the way that Blackie had it. The cool part was, I called my dad and I said, hey, you at the farm this weekend? And he said, yeah, what's up? And I said, stop and see me on your way home on Sunday night. He said, yeah, what's going on? And I said, just stop and see me. I want to show you something. And he did. He stopped, he saw me, and he said, what do you want to show me? I rolled the garage door up, I rode Blackie out in the driveway, and I started it up. He started crying, I started crying. I turned it off. I said, you want to ride it? And he said, no. And I said, what do you want to do with this thing? And he said, why don't you keep it and you give it to Lena one day? And I've had it ever since. It sits in my office because of all the motorcycles that I own. This is the most important to me, to my family. It's not worth the most, but in my heart, it is. I remember a guy pulled up one time, and he was across the street, and he saw that Triumph in there, and he came over, knocked on the door, and he asked my dad if he could look at it. My dad said, sure. And they went in, they looked at it, and they talked about it, and the guy said, what do you take for it? And my dad said, it's not for sale. The guy said, everything's for sale. My dad said, this Triumph ain't for sale. The guy said, okay. So it's a cool motorcycle. I usually drag it out of here about once a year, and I'll start it up. I'll ride it, Lena will ride it, and then I put it back in here. But it's been every bit of a year since I've done that. So anyway, you can see all the different things that we've done to it. It's not stock, and it may be worth more money on the open market if it was stock. I ain't interested in stock. I don't like stock. I wanted it the way that Blackie had it. So I cleaned it up, and I detailed it all out, and I chromed it out and painted things black and just made it the way that it was when he had that accident in 1964. So that's the story of Blackie, James Blackstone. He lived and died on this motorcycle. Rick Fairless, Strokers Dallas. Love you, bye.